I'm about to tell you something that could save you from making the biggest financial mistake of your life. At 52 years old, I lost everything. My business collapsed. My savings vanished. And I found myself starting over with nothing but hard-earned lessons. But here's the twist. That failure taught me more about success than my previous 30 years in business ever did. And what I discovered might shock you. The truth is, most people over 50 who start businesses fail within the first 2 years. Not because they lack experience. Not because they don't work hard enough. But because they make one critical mistake that I'm going to reveal to you today. Let me take you back to where it all went wrong. I had spent 3 decades building a successful career. I had money in the bank. I had connections. I had confidence. When I decided to start my own consulting business at 50, I thought I had every advantage. I was dead wrong. Within 18 months, I had burned through my retirement savings. My marriage was strained. My confidence was shattered. And I was facing the very real possibility of bankruptcy at an age when most people are thinking about retirement. So what went wrong? Here's the first thing I wish I had known. The world doesn't care about your past experience as much as you think it does. I walked into entrepreneurship thinking my 30 years of corporate experience would open doors. Instead, I found myself competing with 25-year-olds who understood digital marketing better than I understood my morning coffee. They had smaller overhead. They moved faster. They spoke the language of the new economy. Meanwhile, I was still trying to network the old-fashioned way. Business lunches. Golf outings. Printed business cards. All the things that worked in 1995 but were practically obsolete in 2015. The market had changed. But I hadn't changed with it. Here's the second brutal truth I learned. Starting over after 50 means you're racing against a clock that younger entrepreneurs don't even hear ticking. When you're 25 and your business fails, you have time to recover. You can take risks. You can afford to lose everything and start again. But at 50? Every year counts. Every dollar matters. Every mistake costs you not just money, but irreplaceable time. I didn't factor this into my planning. I approached my business with the same risk tolerance I had in my 30s. Big investments. Long-term plays. Aggressive growth strategies. But I didn't have the luxury of time anymore. And that miscalculation nearly destroyed me. The third mistake I made was surrounding myself with the wrong people. I sought advice from other baby boomers who had started businesses. People my age. People with similar backgrounds. It felt comfortable. It felt safe. And it was completely wrong. What I needed was mentors who understood the current market. Young entrepreneurs who could teach me about social media marketing. Tech-savvy advisors who could help me automate processes. Financial planners who specialized in late career transitions. Instead, I got well-meaning advice from people who were just as out of touch as I was. We were all fighting yesterday's battles while the market had already moved on to tomorrow's wars. Now let me tell you about the fourth critical error. I underestimated how much the rules had changed. In my corporate career, success meant stability. Consistency. Building systems that worked and then maintaining them. But in the startup world, especially today's startup world, success means constant adaptation. The platforms change. The algorithms change. Customer preferences change. What worked last month might be obsolete this month. And I wasn't prepared for that pace of change. I spent 6 months building a perfect business plan. By the time I launched, half of my assumptions were already outdated. The market had shifted. New competitors had emerged. Technologies I hadn't even considered were now industry standard. Younger entrepreneurs understand this instinctively. They launch fast. They iterate. They pivot. They're comfortable with uncertainty because they've never known anything else. But I came from a world of 5-year plans and quarterly reviews. That mindset nearly killed my business before it even got started. Here's the 5th thing I wish someone had told me. Your biggest asset isn't your experience. It's your ability to unlearn. I had to unlearn everything I thought I knew about marketing, about sales, about customer service, about team building. The strategies that made me successful in corporate America were actively hurting me as an entrepreneur. But unlearning is hard. Especially when you've spent decades being rewarded for doing things a certain way. Your ego gets involved. Your identity gets wrapped up in your methods. Admitting that your way doesn't work anymore feels like admitting that you don't matter anymore. I resisted this lesson for far too long. And it cost me dearly. The 6th mistake was about money. Specifically, how much I needed and where it should come from. I thought my savings would be enough. I had a decent nest egg. Not enough to retire on, but enough to fund a startup, right? Wrong. What I didn't account for was how expensive it is to start over after 50. I still had a mortgage. College tuition for my youngest. Healthcare costs that were higher than they'd ever been. My monthly overhead was 3 times what a 25-year-old entrepreneur's would be. And I made the fatal mistake of funding my business entirely with personal savings. No investors. No loans. Just my retirement money, slowly draining away month after month. When younger entrepreneurs fail, they lose other people's money. When I failed, I lost my future. Now here's where the story takes a turn. Because I did eventually figure it out. Not before losing almost everything, but before losing absolutely everything. The breakthrough came when I finally admitted I needed help. Real help. Not from friends my age who would make me feel better about my failures. But from people who could actually teach me what I didn't know. I hired a 28-year-old marketing consultant. It hurt my pride. It cost money I didn't think I could spare. But she taught me more about reaching customers in 3 months than I had learned in 3 years of trying on my own. I joined online communities of entrepreneurs. I watched YouTube videos made by people half my age. I read blogs. I listened to podcasts. I became a student again, and I checked my ego at the door. And slowly, things started to turn around. But here's what I want you to understand. The lessons I learned came at an enormous cost. Financial cost, yes. But also emotional cost. Relationship cost. Health cost. There were nights I couldn't sleep. Days I couldn't eat. Moments when I seriously considered just giving up and taking whatever job I could find, even if it meant working for someone half my age at half my previous salary. So let me give you the advice I wish someone had given me before I started this journey. First, before you invest a single dollar, invest in education. Learn about digital marketing. Understand social media. Get comfortable with technology. You don't need to become an expert, but you need to speak the language. Second, start smaller than you think you need to. Test your ideas before you bet everything on them. Use your savings to buy time and learning, not to fund a fully formed business that might be based on outdated assumptions. Third, find mentors who are succeeding in today's market, not yesterday's. Seek out people who make you uncomfortable with how much they know that you don't. That discomfort is where growth happens. Fourth, accept that you're going to have to change. Not just your business strategies, but your identity. The person who succeeds as an entrepreneur after 50 is not the same person who succeeded in corporate America. You have to be willing to become someone new. Fifth, protect your downside more aggressively than you pursue your upside. You don't have time to recover from catastrophic losses. Build in safety nets. Keep reserves. Don't bet everything on one outcome. And finally, be honest with yourself about why you're doing this. If you're starting a business because you're bored or because you want to prove something, stop right now. Those are terrible reasons that will lead to terrible decisions. But if you're doing it because you've identified a real problem you can solve, because you have a genuine passion for serving customers, because you're willing to learn and adapt and grow, then you have a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. Today, my business is stable. Not wildly successful, but sustainable. Am not rich, but am not broke. I work harder than I ever did in corporate America, but I also have more freedom and more purpose. Was it worth it? That's a question I'm still answering. Some days yes. Some days I wonder what my life would look like if I had just stayed in my comfortable corporate job until retirement. But here's what I know for certain. If you're thinking about starting over after 50, you need to go into it with your eyes wide open. The statistics are brutal. Most senior business ventures fail. Not because older entrepreneurs aren't smart or hardworking, but because the game has changed and many of us are still playing by old rules. Don't make the mistakes I made. Don't assume your experience is enough. Don't underestimate how much you need to learn. Don't isolate yourself with people who think like you. And for the love of everything, don't bet your retirement on an untested idea. Starting over after 50 is possible. I'm living proof. But it requires humility, adaptability, and a willingness to become a beginner again in a world that moves faster than it ever has before. The question isn't whether you can do it. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price to learn what you need to learn. Because that price is real, and it's high, and no one can pay it for you. I paid it. And am still paying it. But at least now I know what I'm paying for.